the day arrogance met its match. I have sat behind this bench for a long time. I have seen grief walk through my courtroom doors. I have seen injustice wearing expensive suits. I have seen the powerful try to grind the powerless into dust right in front of me, like I wasn't watching every single second. But I want to tell you about one particular day, one man, one moment, one sentence that was meant to destroy me. And what happened next is something I think every one of you needs to hear. Because that morning, arrogance walked into my courtroom believing it had already won. It was wrong. If you believe that experience still matters in this world, that wisdom earned through decades of hard work cannot be dismissed by a loud mouth and a smirk, stay right here with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this is exactly the kind of story we tell in this space. Now let me take you back to that morning. His name was Marcus Reed. He walked in like the room already belonged to him. I noticed him before he even took his seat. That particular kind of walk, chest pushed forward, chin raised, eyes moving around the room, not with curiosity, but with calculation, like he was quietly deciding how much everything was worth and had already concluded he was the most valuable thing present. He wore a dark blazer, pressed shirt, no tie, the careful look of a man who wants to appear serious without committing to it. Professional looking, but not professional, and he was not. Marcus Reed had never passed the bar, never practiced a single day of law in his life, but he had something he believed was far more powerful than any degree hanging on a wall. He had a following. Online, he called himself the legal liberator. He posted videos, sometimes 3 a day, telling ordinary Americans that the court system was nothing but theater, that judges were just actors in robes, that real people didn't need lawyers because the whole system existed to keep regular folks afraid and paying. And people believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was confident. He was loud. He spoke in short sentences loaded with big promises. He knew exactly what desperate people needed to hear. He knew how to find the crack in someone's hope and pour himself right in. So they paid him. Single mothers fighting for their children. Small business owners drowning in contracts they didn't understand. Elderly couples who couldn't decode an eviction notice. They all found Marcus online, and Marcus found their savings. He sold them legal templates that weren't worth the paper they printed on. He coached them with strategies that existed nowhere in any real legal textbook. He told them to ignore official court letters, that responding only gave the system power over them. And when those people lost, when they lost their homes and their businesses and their children, Marcus Reed did what cowards always do. He blamed them, said they hadn't followed his instructions correctly, said the system was corrupt and had specifically targeted them, said they were victims of the machine, not victims of him. Then he blocked them and moved on to the next desperate person with a story and a bank account. That is who sat across from me that morning. But I didn't know all of it yet, not fully. What I did know was the woman sitting on the other side of that courtroom. Her name was Gloria Santos, 53 years old, originally from Puerto Rico. She had come to this country with $30, a suitcase, and the kind of quiet faith that either builds a life or quietly breaks a heart. Gloria built a life. Over 20 years, she grew a small cleaning business from nothing. She and her late husband started with one single client, a dentist's office 2 blocks from their apartment. They cleaned it themselves every night after finishing their day jobs, hands raw, backs aching, never complaining, because the dream was worth it. Eventually, they had something real. 8 employees, a small office, a name that people in the neighborhood actually trusted. When her husband passed, Gloria kept it going. For him, for their 2 daughters, for every early morning and every late night the 2 of them had given to something bigger than themselves. Then a dispute broke out with her business partner, a man she had trusted for years, who had been quietly draining the company accounts. She needed legal help, and she needed it fast. She could not afford an attorney. Consultations alone cost more than she earned in a week. And that is when she found Marcus Reed's videos. He promised her he could handle everything. Business fraud, contract disputes. His specialty, he said. He knew the loopholes. He knew how to beat men like her partner. She didn't need a lawyer. She needed him. She paid him $4,000. He sent her a packet of documents, typed, formatted, full of language that sounded official if you didn't know better. He told her to file them herself. He told her not to respond to anything her partner's real attorneys sent over. Follow the instructions, he said. Trust me. She trusted him. She followed every instruction. She lost everything. The judge in her original case dismissed her claim because the documents Marcus had given her were filled with legal gibberish, impressive-sounding words strung together into sentences that meant absolutely nothing. Her partner walked away clean. The company she and her husband had poured 2 decades into, gone. Gloria filed a complaint. When investigators began pulling that thread, they found dozens of people just like her. A pattern, a trail of shattered lives stretching back years. And that trail led directly to my courtroom, to the man now sitting across from her with a smirk on his face. He wasted no time. The moment I called the case to order, Marcus leaned forward with the posture of someone who had rehearsed this scene in the bathroom mirror the night before. "Before we get started," he said, voice smooth and almost theatrical, "I need to raise the question of whether this court even has legitimate authority." The room went still. I looked at him calmly. "Go on." "I've done my research," he continued, "and I have serious doubts about whether the judge sitting in this case has the real credentials to preside over it." Murmurs moved through the gallery, not loud ones, the kind people make when something deeply uncomfortable happens in a public space. I sat still. I kept my expression even. I let him continue, because I have learned something over 50 years behind a bench. The man who is planning to talk himself into a hole will always talk faster when you give him silence. "You're a television personality," he said, "not a real judge. That robe is a costume. This courtroom is a production set, and the people in this country deserve to know that the woman deciding their lives never actually earned the right to do so." There it was. The sentence he had built his whole performance around. The accusation he believed would crown him in front of millions. And for a moment, just a moment, I let myself feel it, not because it was true, but because I knew where it came from. I had heard that voice before, in different rooms, wearing different faces, across 50 years of a career that people like him assumed I had stumbled into by accident. The voice that looks at a woman of a certain age and sees a decoration instead of a life's work. The voice that mistakes dignity for weakness and quiet strength for surrender. I had heard it before, and every single time I let it speak until it was finished. Then I answered. Gloria had gone very still across the courtroom. Her hands were folded on the table in front of her, and I could see the effort it took to hold them steady. She wasn't looking at Marcus. She was looking at me, like she was trying to figure out if this room was still safe, like she had been told so many times that the people who were supposed to protect her couldn't be trusted, and she was holding her breath, waiting to find out if that was true here, too. I made a decision in that moment. Whatever happened next in this courtroom, Gloria Santos would not leave it feeling invisible. I turned to her gently. "Mrs. Santos," I said, "I want to hear from you directly. Tell me, in your own words, how you came to work with Mr. Reed." She cleared her throat once. Then she spoke. She told me about the bakery. No, her cleaning company. She corrected herself quietly, and I could hear the grief packed into that small correction. The business her husband and she had named together. The clients who had stayed with them for 15 years. The trust she had built one honest day at a time. She told me about the night she sat at her kitchen table alone, bills spread out in front of her, her husband's photograph on the counter behind her, trying to figure out how to save what they had built together. She told me about finding the videos, about how certain he sounded, about how he had looked directly into the camera and said the words she needed to hear, that ordinary people like her could fight back, that she didn't have to give up. She paused once, pressing her lips together. "I just wanted to save what we had built," she said. "That's all I wanted." Marcus laughed. Not a full laugh, just that short, dismissive exhale that certain people use when they want to reduce someone's pain to foolishness. "That's not fraud," he said. "That's just poor judgment. Some people are too trusting for their own good." Gloria flinched. I felt the room shift, and that is the moment I stopped being patient. "Mr. Reed," I said, my voice quiet and very level, "let me make something clear to you. This courtroom is not your stage, and Mrs. Santos is not your punchline." He met my eyes without blinking. "And you're not a real judge." "Then let's settle that question right now," I said. I reached for the folder beside me. I did not slam it. I did not wave it. I simply opened it, the way you open something that has been waiting a long time to be seen. "I received my law degree in 1965, I said. "I practiced family law and criminal prosecution for over 2 decades before I ever stepped in front of a camera. I presided over real cases with real families and real stakes in a real courthouse. Every credential I hold is documented, verified, and a matter of public record." I slid the first sheet toward the clerk. "This is my original degree." I slid another. "This is my bar admission." I placed both hands flat on the bench and looked at him. "Now, you have accused me, on the record, of falsifying my qualifications. I have just shown you mine. I am going to ask you to show me yours." The silence in that courtroom was the kind that has weight to it. Marcus opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. "Credentials aren't what makes someone qualified," he said, but the performance was going out of his voice. It was getting thin. "I have real-world experience. I've helped thousands of people." "I see," I said. "And how many of those people would you like to discuss today? Because I have their files right here." I lifted the second folder. It was thicker, much thicker. 41 complaints filed against you in the past 3 years, I said. Not opinions, complaints from people who paid you money, who followed your instructions, who lost their cases, their homes, and in several instances, their children in custody disputes, because the documents you provided them were not legally valid. His jaw tightened. "You told Mrs. Santos not to respond to her attorney's correspondence," I continued. "Do you know what happens in a legal proceeding when one party goes silent? The court rules in favor of the party who showed up. You didn't just fail her. You handed her case to her opponent and called it strategy." "The system is corrupt," he said, quieter now. "The system," I replied, "is imperfect, like everything human beings build. But imperfect systems still require people to engage with them honestly. You did not prepare these people to fight the system. You prepared them to lose, and then you collected your fee before they found out." He pushed back from the table slightly, an involuntary movement, the body trying to create distance from a truth it doesn't want to sit next to. "You have no right to speak to me like this," he said. "Mr. Reed," I said, "I have every right. That is precisely what this bench means." Gloria was crying. She was trying not to, pressing 2 fingers against her lips. But the tears were there, quiet and steady. Not the tears of defeat, something else. Something that looked like relief finally arriving after a very long wait. I addressed her directly. "Mrs. Santos," I said, "you did nothing wrong. You asked for help when you needed it. You trusted a person who presented himself as trustworthy. That is not naivete. That is called being a human being. And every wrong that was done to you in this matter, I want you to hear this clearly, is documented. It is real, and it will be addressed." She pressed her hand flat against her chest and nodded. Just once. She couldn't speak. She didn't need to. I turned back to Marcus. The performance was completely gone now. What sat in that chair was no longer the legal liberator, no longer the rebel fighting the corrupt machine. What sat there was just a man, watching the consequences of his choices walk through the door and take a seat. Confidence is not a credential, I told him, and the louder a person proclaims their own wisdom, the more carefully I listen for what they are not saying. You told your followers the system was the enemy, but you were the one taking their money. You were the one disappearing when the verdicts came in. You were the enemy you warned them about. You just dressed it up in different language. He had no answer. This court is referring your case to the Attorney General's office for formal investigation into unlicensed legal practice, consumer fraud, and deceptive business conduct, I said. A formal hold is being placed on your accounts pending that investigation. I picked up my gavel, and I paused, because I wanted the room to sit in that silence for just one more moment. I wanted every person present to feel it, not as triumph, not as spectacle, but as something returning to its proper place. Justice doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like this, quietly, with paperwork, with patience, with a woman behind a bench who has been doing this work since before some people in that room were born. The gavel came down once, clean, final, simple. This court is adjourned. Gloria stood slowly. She gathered her things carefully, like someone who had learned not to rush, who had learned that good moments are fragile and deserve to be handled gently. I watched her from the bench as the gallery began to stir and rise around her. She was not the same woman who had walked in that morning, holding herself together with sheer will. Something had shifted in her posture, not pride exactly, more like a person who had been carrying a weight so long they had forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight and was now remembering. She stopped near the door. She looked back at the bench, and she mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." I nodded once. No cameras needed for that moment. No audience required. Just one woman recognizing another. Just the simple acknowledgement that passes between people who have both learned, in different ways, that this world will test you, and that the only answer is to keep standing. As for Marcus Reed, he was escorted from that courtroom without his smirk, without his audience, without the narrative he had written for himself in which he was the hero. I am told he tried to post a video that evening from his car, explaining to his followers what had happened, framing it as persecution, building himself back up with the same language he had always used. But something had broken. Even his most loyal followers started asking questions in the comments, wondering why he hadn't fought back harder, wondering why, if he truly knew the law, the judge had been able to produce so much evidence and he had produced none. The investigation opened within the week. The quiet kind of justice, the kind that doesn't make headlines on day one, but changes things permanently, had already started doing its work. I have been asked many times over the years whether it ever gets to me, the dismissiveness, the assumption that the robe I wear was handed to me instead of earned, the raised eyebrow from someone who sees my age, my gender, my history, and immediately begins constructing a smaller version of me in their mind. I will tell you honestly, some days, yes, it gets to me, not because I doubt myself. I stopped doubting myself a long time ago, but because the people who carry that dismissiveness into my courtroom rarely come alone. They come carrying the same attitude that allowed them to take advantage of someone like Gloria Santos, the same belief that certain people are not worth the full respect of the law, that experience can be waved away, that wisdom is just stubbornness in older clothing. And every time that attitude walks through my door, I think about the people sitting on the other side of the room, the ones who came in quietly, who are holding themselves together, who need to believe that this system, imperfect as it is, still sees them. That is why I do this. Not for the moments of dramatic confrontation, not for the shutdowns, not for the silence that falls when truth lands, for the glorias, for the people who built something with their own hands and trusted the wrong person, and still had the courage to walk through a courthouse door and say, "This was wrong. This happened to me, and I need someone to hear it. I hear it. This bench hears it, And as long as I am behind it, arrogance does not get the last word. Experience does. It always does. If this story reminded you that quiet strength is still the most powerful force in any room, drop the word truth in the comments below. And if you believe good people deserve someone in their corner, subscribe, because we are just getting started.